On November 4th, 1989, 22-year-old Eloise Lindsay began a long hike across the Appalachian Mountains. As an experienced hiker, she was excited about the challenge and oblivious to the horrors that awaited her there. During her 3 weeks in the wilderness, she was subjected to mental torment from someone she claims was out there, watching her. On failing to meet her friend at the 7-day mark, the authorities were called and the trail was extensively searched. 3 weeks later, Eloise was found on the brink of death and rushed to the hospital. As soon as Eloise stepped into that trail, her life changed forever. And this is her account, which she told her college reporter friend Anna Gallo in January 1990. I'd recently graduated from college and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. All of my friends had jobs to go to and knew their purpose in life, but not me. I felt like I hadn't found my place in the world. I'd always found solace in nature, ever since I'd been a kid, as I used to go on long hikes with my grandpa. Being out in the wilderness with just my own thoughts for company was exactly what I needed, to hopefully find myself. I'd always wanted to hike in the Appalachian Mountains, so it kind of felt like it was now or never. As I saw it, when else in my life would I have the freedom to just go for it and do something like this? My friend Jen thought it was a great idea and encouraged me to do it. She even agreed to meet me at the 7-day mark at a particular meeting spot so she could give me fresh supplies and join me the rest of the way. I appreciated that gesture, as I knew she wasn't into the whole surround yourself in nature thing. At least not as much as I was. So her agreeing to do this for me meant a lot. My parents were cool with my decision to do this too. I think they were just glad to have me out of the house. They could see how confused I was, and I knew they just wanted the best for me, and for me to figure this stuff out. They also knew that when it came to hiking, I knew what I was doing. My mom even drove me the 4-hour trip to the starting point. We went through my checklist to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything, and she hugged me tightly and told me to be careful out there. I waved goodbye to her, feeling positive about the whole experience. I was so excited about it all. If only I knew then what lay in store for me, I would have turned around and gotten far, far away from that place. But I didn't know what was going to happen, so with my map and my compass in hand, I stepped into the wilderness. The first 2 days were everything I imagined them to be and more. I think I saw a max of 3 people, and that was back on the first day, close to the entrance. Soon, it was just me and nature. That time of year, it was transitioning from fall to winter. I loved crunching across the golden brown leaves and looking at the patchwork of colors. I'd lucked out on the weather, and the dry, breezy days were perfect for keeping up the pace. I just walked and walked without any worries. It was such a good feeling knowing that I was in control and that I was doing what I wanted. My mind finally felt clear. On the second night, I camped just off the trail surrounded by pine trees. I slept without a worry in the world. So how did I wake up to this nightmare? It's hard to explain, but I sensed something was wrong. I went through the mental checklist, making sure I hadn't taken a wrong turn on the trail or forgotten something really important. I just couldn't work out what it was that was making me feel so uneasy. And that's the first time. Being out there, I felt truly uncomfortable. I had no way of contacting anyone. I just had to push my doubts and just get on with it. I packed up my tent, I triple-checked all my equipment, and I told myself to relax. Just relax and focus on the trail. I was tying my bootlace on top of a rock when I swear I saw something there. Through the trees, about 40 feet away. I kept on looking. They were partially hidden by the trees, but I saw enough to know it was a man. And he was looking directly at me. I stared at that spot, frozen with fear and unable to hear anything over my hammering heartbeat. Then the next second, that man, he vanished. I didn't dare move. I was too freaked out. I felt like a rabbit caught in headlights. I knew what I saw, but being a practical thinker, my mind immediately tried to find the logic. It could have been another hiker, or maybe I was homesick, or something like that, and that was causing me to imagine things. Even thinking this was just dumb. I knew I didn't imagine it, and if it was another hiker, then why did he lurk behind the trees and stare at me like that? That wasn't a normal thing for hikers to do. That was unsettling and very weird. I wanted to get away from that spot quickly. So I grabbed my backpack and I went on my way. I walked as fast as I physically could so I could make some distance between me and that spot where I saw that man. I'd been walking for about an hour and I stopped for a water break. As soon as I stopped, I felt that same sense of dread as I had done before. I swear something was out there, still watching me. I quickly continued moving, but this time, as I walked, I couldn't shake off that uneasy feeling that I wasn't alone. I peered back so many times and I couldn't see anyone. I knew it, though. I just knew someone was out there watching me through the trees. All I could think about was how I was in the middle of nowhere without anyone to help me. I just had to keep on moving and hope that this watcher got bored of me. I walked so much that day, and the feeling of being watched only intensified as the sun began to set. I had that terrifying realization that I was going to have to stop soon. I would have to spend all night at the mercy of whoever was out there watching me. But I was so exhausted. There wasn't a part of me that didn't ache. Yet, as I set up camp, I couldn't switch off. I didn't dare risk lighting a fire and drawing that attention to myself. I ate cold beans straight from the can, and as I couldn't boil the water that I collected from a stream, I rationed what I had that night. In my tent, I don't think I slept at all. I jumped at every rustle and movement that I heard, but I also flinched right through the silence. The next morning, I just wanted to get out of there and keep on moving. I must have been running on pure adrenaline. I just knew I had to pack up as quickly as possible and try and put some distance between me and that very uneasy feeling. The problem was that as I walked, that feeling stuck to me like glue. That feeling someone was watching me. I tried reassuring myself that it would be okay, and I just kept on moving. But then I heard this muffled grunting sound. It's the only way I can describe it. A sound that wasn't quite whole, but still, it seemed to echo through the woods. I felt the hair prickle on the back of my neck, and I took this as a warning sign to get the hell out of there. I started running off the trail and down the mountain. In my panic, I thought that was a shortcut to the road. I don't know. I suppose I wasn't thinking rationally. All I knew was that staying on that path wasn't working for me. Maybe whoever was watching me wouldn't expect me to veer up from the path, and then I'd be safe. Only the noises followed me. Every time I took a breath or looked around me, I caught a shadowy glimpse through the trees for I heard a muffled grunt. It was terrifying. I moved aimlessly, hoping and praying that I'd come to a road. I lost all sense of time out there. Fear will do that to a person. I only knew I must have been walking all day when I saw the sun setting. Reality set in. It would be dark soon, so I'd have to spend another night out there alone. But worse still, I'd left the trail. So now I had absolutely no idea where I was. I'd cried until I had no tears left. Then I just got on with it, setting up my tent, making a campfire, and I decided to light a fire this time, as I needed a warm meal and a means to boil my water. This creep knew where I was anyway, so I figured that the light from my fire wouldn't make a difference, and it felt so comforting being next to the flames, as if they were somehow a barrier between me and whatever it was watching me out there. As I put the fire out and got into my tent, then the true gravity of my situation sunk in. The darkness wasn't welcoming, and it seemed to heighten my senses. I felt this tingle in my spine. It was a warning. Right before I heard them, the muffled grunts. They were coming from outside, close to the perimeter of my tent. I lay there frozen, hoping, praying they'd stop, but knowing they wouldn't. Then I heard the rustling and the twigs snapping. Footsteps. Distant, but there. Pacing through the area, now closer to my tent. This went on all night. I didn't flinch. I tried to quiet my breathing. Then I just lay there, terrified that whoever it was out there watching me would try and get into my tent. I started thinking about my life, how there were so many things that I wanted to do. I hadn't even figured out what I wanted to do in the world yet. I didn't want to go out in the wilderness at the hands of some watcher. The next day, I got up at sunrise. I packed up and I started moving. I knew I had to just keep on going. I had to reach a road eventually. I had to reach help. I could sense them watching me as I walked. I heard the muffled grunts. I couldn't escape them. It felt like a game to them, but it wasn't one to me. I wanted this nightmare to end so I could just go home. Day and night and day and night. I don't even know how long this went on for, but I do know that the day I was meant to be meeting Jen came and went. I knew she'd be freaking out. I should have been there, so the fact I wasn't meant that she'd know that something was drastically wrong. As I set up camp and I tried to mentally prepare myself for another night of mind games and torment, I tried to give myself some solace in knowing that Jen would have alerted the authorities. Rangers would be searching for me. My body stiffened and my mind ached. It dawned on me that they would be looking for me, all right, but in the wrong place. I'd veered off the trail days ago. I was lost in a nowhere land, being tracked like deer. A search team finding me was like a needle in a haystack. The only person who knew where I was the person watching me day to night. All day I felt them watching me and heard those muffled grunts. All night they paced close to my tent. I had broken sleep, alert to the notion that at any moment, whoever it was out there could break free of the shadows and force their way into my tent. I was rationing what little food I had left and picking the berries that I knew were safe to eat. As for any sort of weapon, I only had the rusty penknife, an old gift from my grandpa. I only thought I'd need it for sharpening twigs and other basics, not for defending my life. But I felt foolish for not bringing anything else. Anything that could help me defend myself as well as survive. I just didn't think I'd need it. Each day, I walked that little bit less. The fatigue and strain on my slim frame was a lot to cope with. My feet were raw with blisters, and each step I made was agony. I felt like I was going in circles. I'd seen that same curved tree multiple times. But wherever I went, the muffled grunts and the distant footsteps came too. Then day turned to night, and I was still stuck in this purgatory as I lay in my tent that night, listening to the rain splatter against the canvas. I bit my lip and I cried silent tears. The rain made it harder to hear them. The rain made me more on edge. I couldn't hear anything. I couldn't hear if they were closer to me or not. Then it happened. Something shook my tent. It wasn't the wind. Someone was shaking it. I screamed so loud, I lost my voice almost instantly. I continued screaming as if on mute. The tent shaking stopped soon after, but I was so freaked out. I sat up and I pointed the open penknife at the door, ready to strike if anyone tried to get in. And that's how I stayed for the remainder of the night. I don't know when the rain stopped and was replaced by muffled grunts. I don't know how I even stayed awake. At first light, I was so tired. I could barely keep my eyes open. I started packing in a trance, but as I looked up, I saw him. He was about 10 feet away. He was in dirty clothes, ragged and torn, and had this thick, wild hair, shaggy and matted. He was staring straight at me with dark, round eyes. He was standing there, watching me, unblinking and still. I left my backpack and I ran. I didn't think about anything other than getting as far away from him as quickly as I could. When I eventually stopped running, the pain hit me tenfold. Agony seized through my body and I fell to the ground. I only had one hiking boot on, the lace untied. My other foot was a mixture of bloodied, ripped sock, shredded against my flesh. I didn't have time to properly look at it when I heard it, the muffled grunt. It wasn't far away from me, and I knew I couldn't run anymore, so my only option was to hide. I searched around, desperately trying to find somewhere, when something caught my eye. I knew how to spot a hollow tree. I used to play in one as a kid. Moist soil, gangly dead branches were good giveaways. I snuck inside of it and I sat there, curled up in a ball and praying that man wouldn't find me. I saw a plastic bag in front of me in the dirt. I was terrified of what would be in it, but I looked anyway. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. Candy, heaps of candy, each piece individually wrapped in foil. My eyes widened like a kid checking out their trick-or-treat haul at Halloween. Maybe I was imagining this, but it smelled and tasted real. I swear that candy, real or not, was what kept me alive. Maybe someone had stashed it there and forgotten about it, or maybe I'd just lost my mind. Not that it mattered at this point. For the next few days, I fell in and out of consciousness. I couldn't figure out if the muffled grunts I heard on repeat were there or in my head. Now, I didn't know if the man was still watching me or not. I didn't know what he wanted with me. I honestly thought this was it. I was going to die out there. The thought of never seeing my family and friends again and telling them how much I loved them, it hurt me more than my broken body ever did. I think I wanted it to end because I had no strength left and the mental torture was too much to handle. I couldn't run anymore. I didn't have the energy or the thought process left to do this. All I could do was hide. When I heard those heavy footsteps, I held out a shaking hand. I didn't have my penknife anymore. I must have dropped it while running, but I still held my arm there as if I was holding it. The feet shuffled past, dark green and black hiking boots. But then they came back. I saw a face, a man. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. All I could do was close my eyes and wish for him to go away. I don't know when I realized that it wasn't the Watcher, but it was a hunter who followed my bloody footmarks to my hiding spot. He managed to calm me down. He passed me water and a protein bar and placed his hunting jacket around me. I don't actually remember much of it, only that he managed to carry me to safety. When I started to piece it all together in the hospital, I cried. I cried into the pillows and the static white linen. I cried until I knew that was it. My tear quota, it was up. I'd never cry again. It took a long time to convince myself that I hadn't died out there, that this was real. By some miracle, I hadn't died. I had my whole life in front of me. I knew the nightmares of my time in the Appalachian Mountains would haunt me forever. But life is short and unpredictable. Nightmares or not, I needed to grab life and live it. I needed to work out what my place was in the world, a place away from the darkness and free from wild men that stare in the night. Eloise Lindsay was found by a hunter named Garth Spencer, who transported her to the closest hospital in his pickup truck. She was malnourished, emaciated, and delirious. To begin with, the doctors put her talk of Watchers down to her traumatic experience being lost in the wilderness, but Eloise remained adamant that she only strayed from the trail in the first place because someone was watching her. This isn't the first time wild men have been reported being seen across the Appalachian Mountains. Legend tells of a tribe of feral humans known as the Wildmen who live off the land and, on occasion, have stalked, attacked, and tormented hunters, rangers, and hikers. Something happened to Eloise in the Appalachian Mountains. Something so terrifying that she dropped all of her equipment, therefore putting herself in more jeopardy to try and outrun it. Wild men or not, the experience Eloise went on changed her life and her perspective on it. For more scary horror stories, please subscribe.